Big time fight coming up in our main event this weekend from Columbus. As always, one half of your host and duo, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. The man sitting next to me, to my left, to your right, Matt Allen on their respective socials at Matt Allen FNP. Very simple, very easy. Question mark kicks, also with the acronym of QMK. That's live 2 hours before the prelims every single weekend. We get a final look back at the week that was and get to offer up those picks and predictions and the QMK parlay. So coming up this weekend in our main event, really trying to one-up last weekend's main event of Tom Aspinall and Alexander Volkov, trying to book a ticket to a possible interim heavyweight title fight because Francis Ngannou recently had surgery on one of them knees that was all, I guess, sleeved up here in his fight against Ciryl Gane. We have Curtis Blaydes, we have Chris Daukaus. And for Daukaus, he's coming off an unceremonious loss to Derek Lewis where he got finished. His first loss in the UFC, his first loss since he fought for a title against Zhu Anyanwu over with CFFC. For Curtis Blaydes, he's coming off a fight where he got hit a few times by Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Before that, it was a fight against, a man that he had really had a little bit of beef with. Derek Lewis.
Was a 3.5 to 1 favorite.
Got finished in that fight. Wild stuff. Uppercuts abound. But before that, wins over Volkov, JDS, and Shamil Durkimov. You know anything about Curtis Blaydes? He's going to strike a little bit, and then he's going to wrestle. And he's going to go hot and heavy, and he's going to be all on top. And I'm going to stop right there.
Please do.
But you know what you're going to get out of Curtis Blaydes. And for Chris Daukaus, the thing that I always come back to, he trains out of Martinez BJJ.
I'm concerned about what's in your notes about Curtis Blaydes after that line.
When it comes to Chris Daukaus, everybody talks about, well, again, we know that he's lighter for heavyweight. We know that he's fleet of foot, that his boxing's very good. We go back to, pick any of his fights that we've seen so far in the UFC where he's come out on the winning end. The Abdurakhimov knockout, the Oleinik knockout, the Nascimento fight, the fight against Parker Porter. I thought the Porter fight, he looked really speedy. He was able to evade. I really like what I've seen out of Daukaus in that respect. But when it comes back to jiu-jitsu, we just haven't seen it. And he doesn't have any wins by submission as a pro. Neither does Blaydes. But everybody likes to say, okay, well, he has Kyle Daukaus. Well, Brent Gretzky had Wayne Gretzky, and Brent played for the Danbury Trashers. And then you go through it Tom Glavine was great with the Braves.
One of the all-time greats.
But, he also had a brother, Mike Glavine, who played in the majors and was a hitter, and he hit 143. He's a great NCAA coach right now in baseball, but, again, you're not as good as your brother. You never are. There was Eric Lindros, there was Brett Lindros. I can go on for days about this one, but with Chris, we just don't see the jiu-jitsu like we do see out of his brother.
And I've got a pretty big rule on this channel to where if I don't see it in the cage, I don't believe it's a thing. Not really. That is an over-exaggeration. But here's the thing. If you're this good at jiu-jitsu, why the hell don't we ever see it?
Because his hands are so good.
It doesn't matter, though. Even with Jose Aldo, one of the greatest strikers of all time, we at least saw some glimpses of his grappling, at least defensively, in most of his fights. When guys would take him down, you could tell how good of a grappler he was just by how fast he'd get back up to his feet or just by how fast he could break your hands in the clinch. Chris Daukaus hasn't shown any of those skills throughout his career up until this point. And it's not like with a Tom Aspinall, Tom Aspinall's Twitter name, hear me out, is Aspinall, followed by these 3 letters, BJJ. We all know what they stand for, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's how big of a part of his life BJJ has been. And we saw glimpses of it throughout his career up before he submitted Alexander Volkov. So you knew that, okay, if Aspinall can't box up his opponent, in the back pocket, he's going to have this great jiu-jitsu. I don't doubt Chris Daukaus is a good grappler. I would just like to see it more. And the thing about Curtis Blaydes is, does he struggle against the upper echelon of heavyweight? Yeah, he does. He's been finished by Francis twice. He's been finished by Derek Lewis once. Those are 2 of those heavy-handed fighters, regardless of combat sport, we've ever seen. Ever. And the fact that Curtis Blaydes lost to those 2 knockout artists by knockout doesn't mean we have to completely write him off as a contender at this division. Do we know his limitations as a striker? I think we do. I don't think Curtis Blaydes is ever going to be able to go out there and thoroughly outstrike a top 10 guy for 15 minutes. I know he was able to knock out JDS, but that was an older JDS at that stage of his career, and a lot of his strikes were set up by the threat of the takedown, which against someone like JDS, he really has to respect that and put his hands down. If Daukaus is this great grappler, not even a great grappler, but just if Daukaus is comfortable off of his back, it will give him a lot of success in this fight because he won't be worried as much about the takedown attempts of Blaydes. And I really do think that when you're fighting someone like Curtis Blaydes, It's more of an exercise with your mentality more than anything. It's okay. I realize I'm here to wrestle. What am I going to do about that? If you're someone like Francis or Derek Lewis, you're going to figure out ways to time the uppercuts. You're going to figure out ways to land your big power shots because those are cerebral fighters. I know we like to look at Francis and look at Derek Lewis as, wow, they're just big knockout punchers. Like, no, they're really, really smart people too who are thinking about all this as they're setting up those knockout punches. I think Curtis Blaydes is the far more skilled fighter in this fight, but there's one thing about Blaydes that I absolutely hate, and it really cost him against Derek Lewis. Yes, he's a great wrestler. Are his entries very good, though? Not at all.
Very long.
They are, and that's always something that's really going to give him issue against the top-tier power punchers, because if you're a good wrestler, and if I know you're coming to wrestle, all I gotta do is meet you point A to point B at some point while you're going for one of those takedowns, and maybe I'm not strong enough to knock you out with one punch in the middle of the cage, but if you're meeting my punch halfway there, it's just gonna make me seem like that much more of a devastating puncher. So could I see Daukaus landing one of those short in-between punches? I definitely could, but the thing with Daukaus, like you had said, what's the thing that makes him special in the heavyweight division? It's his speed, it's his footwork, it's all those things that don't make him a traditional heavyweight. Well, to beat Curtis Blaydes, I actually think you do need to be a traditional heavyweight, and that's why I like Blaydes so much in this matchup.
Well, you have a look at it for Chris Daukaus. He's coming off a 5-round main event that did not go 5 rounds.
Not long ago.
2 months ago against Derek Lewis, he gets finished. His first UFC loss for Curtis Blaydes. His fight against Derek Lewis, for what it's worth, was a year ago. His fight against Jairzinho Rosenstruik was about 5 months ago. Curtis Blaydes has fought in many a main event with the UFC. And what's the highlight of his UFC career? Probably the win over Overeem.
And that's the thing that I keep on going back to. His 3rd round ground and pound against Alistair Overeem is some of the most vicious, the elbows that he landed from guard. And that's the thing. Most of the time you have to pass guard. Because, again, if you watch MMA, what's so important about guard? Well, guard, my legs, half my body, I can use them offensively, defensively. Curtis Blaydes, in a lot of his fights, will just lay and pray. Let's just tell it like it is. He's not the most exciting grappler of all time. But in that one fight, we saw just behind the curtain a little bit, and it was one of those violent shows we've ever seen behind that curtain. It would be nice if Curtis Blaydes would show that side of him again, because he's not a devastating puncher on the feet. He's a big guy who has improved stand-up, but again, not a great knockout puncher by any means, not a true submission threat. Again, he's someone who really does have to rely on his takedowns, and just overall consistency throughout a fight. I think we did see that aggressive ground and pound side of Curtis Blaydes again. That's how he could get himself back up to a title shot. I don't know if we are ever going to see that version of him, but I do think that if Curtis Blaydes can just wrestle for 5 rounds, he should be able to beat Chris Daukaus, which is wild to say, because I thought Daukaus was going to beat Derek Lewis.
When you look at it for Chris Daukaus, too, I mean, great pop at the end of his shots. He's a guy that can really throw those long-range straight shots and find a home for them, pressure right up against you, get the win, get the finish. Obviously, his fight against Shamil Durkimov, a knockout, Parker Porter, and we go through them. He's been so impressive in the UFC. We have a look at Fight Night picks, threw this out there in the community tab. If you're subscribed, you're going to get that on your feed. But we throw these polls out here because we want to hear from you, but also we definitely read your responses. We do care what you have to say about these. So 1,500 total votes.
We're doing it right now.
For the number 4 ranked, Curtis Blaydes, 74% of the fans going with him. For the number 8 ranked, Daukaus, 26. We go over into that comment section. And for LJ, says, you could be he, they, I don't know. But LJ says, they say, I genuinely feel like Blaydes is a dark horse in the division, but he comes up short sometimes.
He's like Dillian White. He's been the number 1 contender for 6 years now. So at a certain point, Curtis Blaydes has got to get his opportunity.
We have Philip KCA Calloway saying, this is a tough one for me to pick. I love watching both these guys. Kurt has more juice, though, and crazy fast hands, and that much is true. It could happen 21 saying, from a London card where you couldn't miss picks if you tried, to a card where it's a who's who. Definitely need the boys for this one. That sounds like I'm just patting myself on the back, but it could happen 21. Thanks for picking us up. So far, I like Max Payne for the KO and Olynyk to get the sub for his 60th and retire. I like Daukaus in the main, but I don't know if Blaydes can control him and hold him down. It'll be interesting. Askarov and Kai for my fight of the night.
I agree with that.
First last saying, Blaydes striking is becoming more refined and should really be able to neutralize Daukaus in the clinch. Curtis via lay and pray, a la John Fitch. So I'm at the odds for this one. I want to make sure I throw those ones out there. Curtis Blaydes is a pretty big favorite. Open to -300, roughly a -367. For Daukaus, open to +250, +282. And I mean, Matt, I think Chris Daukaus is a hell of a fighter. I don't think 2 months after you lose to Derek Lewis, you should fight Curtis Blaydes.
Okay, James Harden isn't good in the playoffs or when games matter. But if you just look at his playoff resume, he lost to Miami Heat in 2012 in the finals. He's lost to Golden State. It's okay, those are all forgivable losses. You kind of make the same excuse for Curtis Blaydes. You lost to Francis twice, and you've lost to Derek Lewis in one of the most vicious ways possible. Those are all forgivable losses, and those are fighters who don't fight anything like Chris Daukaus. Again, Daukaus relies on his hand speed, and he does get knockouts, but he sets them up with his speed and with his volume, and he finds openings through your defense, more as just relying on the force of one big shot. I can see Chris Daukaus actually boxing up Curtis Blaydes as this fight goes on, similar to how Rosenstrike was able to against Blaydes, because you have to remember, Blaydes didn't do anything in the top position in that fight, but he was able to secure takedowns. What happened when the fight was on the feet, though? Jairzinho was having quite a bit of success. He landed that big flying knee that I still have no idea how Curtis Blaydes was able to eat, but, this honestly is a closer fight, I think, than the odds would suggest, but I do think Curtis Blaydes can be able to get it done. We've never seen him get out-grappled in a UFC fight, and that really is important. We've seen him get outstruck by the most powerful strikers to ever walk the face of the earth. We've never seen him get out-grappled, and I don't think Chris Daukaus can be the first guy to do it.
That's the one. I mean, listen, Brent has Wayne, or Wayne has Brent, and Chris has Kyle, but when I look at this one, I haven't seen it out of Chris Daukaus. I do believe his jiu-jitsu is great. I know. I see it on Instagram. I see it here. I see it there. I've talked about it his whole entire run up to this point. But I have a hard time seeing him finishing Curtis Blaydes on the mat. So for me, I like Curtis Blaydes. He has that Hall of Fame badge takedown ability that you like to see in this division. Everybody has to have something. For him, it's the takedowns. For Francis, it's the power. For Tom Aspinall...
No, for Francis, it's the takedowns, Craig.
For Tom Aspinall, he has all of the gemstones. So we'll see what happens there. But for me, I do have Blaydes in this one. But I'd love to hear some more of the comments that are going on over there in that community tab. Because again... You folks have 74% of you going with Blaydes at a 1,500 total votes. It's way more than the Tapology votes. And we'd definitely love to hear from you. Let us know down below on these videos who you have. Toss a like. Subscribe if you haven't, because it really does help out the channel. And in 2022... it's really been taking off again this year, and we love to see it, and it's all thanks to you guys. So thank you so much for the support this year.
And if you enjoyed these prediction videos, like Craig had said earlier on, we do have one last look at the fights. It normally starts 2 hours before the fight night start. It's a show called Question Mark Kicks. It's a great time. Again, just gives us one last chance to go through the card. If there are any weight misses, any, last chance switches, that's where we get the chance to talk to you guys about it, answer some of your questions. It's always a lot of fun over there.
It gets rowdy in that comment section. Is just it really moves. So check out Question Mark Kicks 2 hours before the prelims on Saturday. A big time card coming up from Columbus. You don't say that very often. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.